The Longhorns playoff hopes are alive and well, and we're talking about them on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You were locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK, Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We'll go over the reasons why Texas had their best offensive performance of the season against Vanderbilt. We'll also hand out a few game balls for Saturday's win a little bit later. But first, let's talk big picture for a moment. The Texas Longhorns have reached their second and final bye week of the 2025 regular season. And despite all the ups and downs, the lefts and rights, the twists and the turns, this team still has a very real shot of making it back to the CFP for the third consecutive year. Texas is 7-2 overall, 4-1 in the SEC right now. And I think it goes without saying, if the Longhorns run the table and end the year 10-2, 7-1 in the SEC, they're going to be in the playoff, and there's a very good chance they're going to be in the SEC championship game as well, with a shot to win the league title. I get it. That's a big if when you have a game at Georgia and Texas A&M still on the schedule. I understand that. But hey, the Longhorns already do have two top 10 wins on their resume, so we know they can hang with and beat really good teams. According to ESPN's Football Power Index, as of this morning, the Longhorns currently have a 54.4% chance to make the playoff. If they lost to Vandy, that number would have been in the teens. With the win, it's over 50%. That ranks 9th in the country, by the way, 5th in the SEC, 9th overall. Again, talking about a 12-team field, so Texas in a pretty good spot right now. Of course, the first college football playoff rankings of the year come out tomorrow. I don't expect Texas to be in the top 12, but I do expect them to be very close to the top 12. The Horns came in ranked 13th in both the AP and coaches poll that came out yesterday. I think they'll be somewhere in the top 15 in the CFP rankings too. And again, with some massive resume boosting opportunities still ahead. If the Longhorns run the table and win these last 3 games, they could end up with a first round bye. Forget just making it to the college football playoff. They could get a first round bye. And don't forget, with the format changes to the bracket this year, you don't have to win your conference to get a top 4 seed and that first round bye. You're just ranked in the top 4 in the final CFP rankings. You will get that game off. I don't think Texas has to run the table, though, to get into the field of 12. Of course, you would like to win these last 3 and take any sort of decision-making out of the committee's hands. But if the Horns do lose one of these final 3 games and they end the year at 9-3, 6-2 in the best conference in the sport, they should absolutely be considered for an at-large spot, especially if Ohio State runs the table and they stay at number 1. The committee has openly talked about rewarding tough schedules and not punishing teams that lose difficult non-conference games. Texas shouldn't be punished too much for losing a game at Ohio State when so many teams around the country are scared to schedule anybody in the non-con. Like a 9-3 Texas should be in over a 10-2 team from a worse conference that didn't schedule anybody tough in non-conference play. If they're not, I don't know why anybody would ever schedule anybody good in non-conference ever again. And you look at some of the teams that Texas has beaten so far. Oklahoma still in the mix. Nice win for them at Tennessee on Saturday. That makes Texas's win in Red River look better. Vanderbilt, that's a 2-loss team. They've got a shot to be 10-2 this year. That's a quality win for your resume. And obviously 9-3 means you get a win over Georgia or A&M. That would be Georgia's second loss of the season. It could be A&M's only loss of the season. So big wins for your resume. And I think if you are going to go 9-3, again, you don't want that. You'd rather be 10-2. We all understand. But if you do go 9-3, I think you'd want to lose to Georgia and then win the last 2. And you'd also probably want Texas A&M to be 11-0. So that win on Black Friday looks as good as possible. wanting A&M to be 11-0. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. But that obviously would be a more impressive victory in the eyes of the committee. Keep in mind, the same analytics that are giving Texas that 54.5% chance to make the playoff, they have Texas losing to Georgia in a couple of weeks. So take that for what it's worth. They think the Horns can't afford a loss and still, again, be in the field of 12 when we get to mid-December. I get it. We're talking about a formula here. Trying to predict what a committee of athletic directors is going to do is like trying to predict the stock market, right? You want to leave any decision out of their hands. I'm sure Alabama and Ole Miss and South Carolina, all those SEC teams that went 9-3 a season ago, I'm sure they were all making pretty similar arguments, thinking that they should have been in. Instead, all of them were left out of the field. So again, you want to put yourself in a position where you make it so there's no decision for the committee to make. The fact that you control your own destiny is a great place to be. And that's kind of the overarching point here. Texas is in a spot that a lot of people didn't think was going to be possible a month ago. Like after the Florida loss, Texas dropped to 3-2 on the season and 0-2 against real teams, right? 3 wins against cupcake non-conference teams. They'd only played 2 teams with the pulse. They lost to both of them. The Longhorns fell out of the top 25. It felt like, forget sky was falling, it felt like the sky had completely fallen already after that SEC opener. Well, what have the Horns done since then? 4 straight wins, 3 of them on the road, 2 of them against top 10 teams, and all of a sudden, the Longhorns find themselves back in the top 15 in the polls. And hey, I don't know how often y'all are looking at bowl projections. Maybe some of y'all haven't wanted to look at them over the last few weeks, but you're starting to see some updated bowl projections since Saturday have Texas back in the college football playoff. We have come a long way from everybody sticking a fork in this team after what happened in the swamp in the first weekend of October. Everyone knew that this 5-game stretch in between the 2 byes was going to make or break the Longhorn season. Texas went 4-1. Not bad at all. I would have signed up for that at the start, especially with what we saw against Ohio State, even what we saw against UTEP. I would have taken 4-1 in this 5-game gauntlet with all of the travel that Texas just had. They did that. The Longhorns are currently a 1-loss team in the SEC with 3 to play. They've won 4 must-win games in a row. Let's see if it continues. But I'm proud of this team, man. I am proud of this team for sticking together and staying the course when a lot of people on the outside jump ship. The boat has steadied. It's time to see where it takes us. Hook 'em horns. And, if somebody could beat Notre Dame, that would be very helpful too. You're obviously rooting for Texas to take care of business. Again, Longhorns run the table. They end the year on, what would that be, a 7-game winning streak? Then they're making it into the playoff. It doesn't matter what anybody else around college football does. But 9-3, you're starting to scoreboard watch a little bit. You're hoping somebody beats Notre Dame. You got some help this past weekend with Miami and Georgia Tech going down. Looking like the ACC is going to be a 1-bid league this year, to use a college basketball term. You got to root against Texas Tech and BYU. I don't think any Longhorn fan is going to have a problem rooting against the Red Raiders. You got to start rooting for other teams to lose as well, so there's less traffic and less of a decision for that college football playoff committee to make. But again, and the Longhorns are building themselves a very, very impressive resume right now, despite the 2 losses. The Florida one obviously hurts. There's nothing that's going to make that one look a whole lot better. But you're in a very, very good spot here with a month to go in the college football regular season. And it's so great because if Texas lost to Vanderbilt on Saturday, we'd be turning our attention to 2026. And now we get 2 weeks to talk about more fun and positive things. And Georgia looks vulnerable. We'll preview that game a ton on this show between now and next Saturday. But another golden opportunity for Texas. But again, considering where this team was a month ago, they have come a long way maneuvering through that crazy 5-game gauntlet to open up conference play. The Longhorns 4-1 in the league with everything still in front of them. Again, they have steadied the ship. Let's see where this thing takes us. What say you? What's your confidence level in Texas making it to the college football playoff? Do you agree with me that the Longhorns can lose one more game and still get in to the field of 12? Would love to hear from y'all in the comments below. All right, let's take things back to Saturday's game. Steve Sarkisian made a couple of big changes to the offense that paid massive dividends against Vanderbilt. What were they, and can they be used going forward? We will dive in next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, college football is back, and we're getting to the good stuff. And there's nothing better than attending a college football game in person. 2 more opportunities here in Austin. There's nothing like DKR on a Saturday in the fall. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets to the game can feel more of a battle than the game itself. Endless lines, hidden fees, prices randomly jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay every single time. The app makes it super simple, and you can even see the exact view from your seat before you purchase, so there are no surprises. This is faster and cheaper and less stressful than any other way that I bought tickets in the past. I think it's going to be the same for you as well. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code LOCKEDONCollege on the Game Time app. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And super excited to tell y'all about Doer. I have heard some amazing things about these jeans. I am waiting for them to arrive in the mail, and I just cannot wait to wear them. I love blue jeans, classic style. But the problem with blue jeans, they can be uncomfortable. That's the beauty of Doer. Their jeans have 5 times more stretch than traditional denim. I've actually done research on this stuff over the last few days, and I cannot wait to try these out. I've heard so many great things, countless 5-star reviews online, tons of stretch. They're also antibacterial as well, meaning your jeans are going to stay fresh longer so you can wear more and wash less. And Doer is all about like high quality. You're not going to need to buy like 15 pairs of these jeans. No, you get a couple of these pairs. They're going to last you a long time. You're going to look great. You're going to be comfortable. You're going to live that active lifestyle that you want to live and look better than every other guy out there. They feel stretchy without looking stretchy. I cannot wait to get my hands on these Doer jeans. They are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. I'm going to try them out. I'm going to be talking about my experiences, and man, I think I'm going to love it, and I'm going to be telling y'all all about it. Hey, you can get a pair for yourself right now, or as an amazing holiday gift for somebody else. Head to shopdoer.com/lockedonlonghorns. That's shopdoer.com/lockedonlonghorns for 15% off your first order. One more time, shopdoer.com/lockedonlonghorns. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Last week, we talked about wanting the Texas offense to do more of what they did in that epic fourth quarter comeback against Mississippi State, right? More 11 personnel, more tempo, more passing, especially quick passing. Those are the things that we had talked about. That's what the Longhorns did well in the fourth quarter and in overtime in Starkville. That's what we wanted to see, those 3 things. Check, check, and check. And we also wanted to see those things earlier in the game without the Longhorns being down by 3 scores. Again, check, check, and it was checkmate for Vanderbilt's defense on Saturday. All of those changes led to the best offensive performance of the year for the Longhorns against a real team, and also the worst defensive performance of the year for the Commodores against any team. The Longhorn offense scored points on their first 6 real possessions of the game against a Commodore defense that hadn't allowed more than 30 points in a game this season. Obviously, Texas got to 34. So let's dive into the changes that were made and why they worked so well. We wanted more 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end. We got it. Only 16 plays on Saturday had 2 tight ends on the field. Remember, there have been times where 5 different tight ends have received snaps in conference games for Texas this year. 12 personnel felt like was a huge part of the Steve Sarkisian offense, and it wasn't working that well. Well, Texas only ran 16 plays with 2 tight ends on the field. That's 27.1%, the lowest 2 tight end game plan for Texas since the season opener against Ohio State. In 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, Texas averaged 8.47 yards per play. I want to make sure I'm reading my notes correctly. 8.47 yards per play in every snap out of 11. That's almost a first down every single snap with that personnel package on the field. And even after Ryan Wingo left the game in the first quarter and didn't return, Texas stayed heavy with those one tight end sets, and the results were fantastic. I mentioned 16 snaps with 2 tight ends on the field. The Longhorns only averaged 3.88 yards per play on those. So 847 out of 11, 388 out of 12. I realize I'm giving you a lot of numbers here, but you could tell there's a big difference there. And honestly, considering those numbers, 16 snaps with 2 tight ends may have been too many, considering what Texas did out of 11. This team has really good wide receivers. Like, I have been scoffing at the notion, I think I said this on Friday, I've been scoffing at the notion that Texas doesn't have playmakers on offense. Just because you might not have a Xavier Worthy or a Bijan Robinson doesn't mean you don't have any big-time playmakers. Texas does, and they just weren't getting those guys the ball enough. Get your balls to the wide receivers. Keep more of them on the field. They don't really have playmakers at tight end. I like Jack Andrews. I thought he had one of his best games as a Longhorn on Saturday, but your best playmakers in your passing game, without question, are your wide receivers. Get them the ball, keep more of them on the field. It spaces the defense, which in turn frees up more room to run the ball, which in turn helps your quarterback, which in turn helps the offensive line. Just makes everything a lot smoother for Texas. It's a win-win, and honestly, it's an adjustment that felt long overdue, but I'm glad it happened. And interestingly enough, in Sark's post-game press conference, he told us that that wasn't the initial game plan. But he said because it was working so well early on and Vanderbilt was struggling to cover, they were also struggling to tackle the Texas receivers in space. He kept going back to that well. Don't love that it wasn't a part of the initial script, but hey, in-game adjustments, that's the sign of a really good coach. Steve Sarkisian made him. Glad he did. Big difference for the Horns. Another quick stat here. Texas also utilized pre-snap motion on 52.5% of its offensive snaps. It's the highest rate in a game this season. I'd like to see more of that too, please. Texas went up tempo a lot in the game. Another thing we were calling for a week ago. 17 points in the first quarter. That tells you that. A lot of no huddle, not allowing Vanderbilt the time to sup, keeping them off balance, keeping your guys in a rhythm. Texas played fast when they needed to. They slowed things down a little bit in the second half. When you have a big lead, you can do that. That's why we talked about how important it was for the Longhorns to throw the first punch on Saturday so they could play more of their game and take Vanderbilt's out of theirs. When you have that big second half lead, you can slow it down. I don't blame the offense too much for that late Vandy comeback. If the Zebras didn't let Vanderbilt tackle Emmett Mosley on a third down, Texas scores another touchdown late. They get over 40. They win this game easily, and we're not talking about a BS onside kick that Texas, thankfully, went out of bounds and preserved the Longhorn victory. But Texas went up tempo. Only 1 punt in the entire game for the offense. 0 turnovers for Texas. The rhythm was there. It worked. More of that, please. And also more passing. 34 dropbacks, only 25 called runs. The run game, unfortunately, just isn't consistent enough to be relied on this year. And that's why you got to throw the ball more. I think Arch Manning is the best player on this offense. He had a hell of a game on Saturday. We'll talk more about him in segment 3 because he's going to get a game ball for what he did against the Commodores. But passing worked, and it wasn't just passing. It was the quick game. Quick passes can serve as an extension of your running game. And think of all of the screens. Screen Sarkisian was back. I said that on Saturday's postgame. Running back screens, wide receiver screens, tight end screens, those help. And when you get the ball out of your quarterback's hands quickly, those mitigate the struggles that you have on the offensive line. Those are short and easier throws that can help your quarterback get into more of a rhythm. All good things when that is a part of your game plan. I love that. Steve Sarkisian made the adjustments. Now he needs to stick with it. This game plan that we saw against Vandy can't be a one-off. This offense is at its best when it's doing these things. We played 9 games this year, y'all. That's a big sample size. This offense is at its best when it's doing those 3 things. We need to see more of that against Georgia, Arkansas, and A&M. And hey, the offensive line deserves a lot of love too. Texas did not allow a sack. Only 1 snap went for negative yards. It's a night and day difference in comparison to the first 8 games that the Horns have played in 2025. But even more than that, more than anything else, Steve Sarkisian tossing the 2 tight end game plan in the garbage and going back to spreading the field, going fast, throwing the football. That's what worked. Keep doing that. Hopefully this group has some confidence. We've been asking for an identity. There's your identity. Hopefully that means they have some confidence for that big trip to Athens coming up 1 week from Saturday. What say you? Your biggest takeaways from Texas's most complete offensive performance of the 2025 campaign. All right. One segment left on a Monday show. For the fourth straight week, we've got some Locked On Longhorns game balls to hand out. Which players get them? I'll tell you coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or just want to ride the hot hand during a game, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at even bigger payouts. FanDuel keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push or your favorite player is on a heater. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So take advantage. Head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, final segment, Victory Monday edition. Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. If you're new here, on Mondays after Texas wins, we hand out game balls for individuals who showed up and showed out for the Longhorns. And because it's a 4-game win streak, we get to do this segment for a fourth Monday in a row. We won't get to do it next week because, well, there's no game next week. First game ball goes to the quarterback, Arch Manning. Amazing. He had his best game against a Power 4 team in his Longhorn career 1 week after he had his best game against a Power 4 opponent in his college career. Also, it was 7 days after suffering a concussion. We weren't sure if Arch was going to play for most of last week. He gets cleared on Friday, is out there on Saturday, and he was balling out of control. You love to see it. 25 of 33, 328 yards. How about 9.9 yards per attempt? 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles. Only had 1 carry. It went for 4 yards, and he took a shot. A little bit of a late slide from Arch Manning. Took a hit there, but I'm glad that Texas didn't need to utilize Arch Manning's legs that much. Didn't want him taking a lot of hits because he was coming off that concussion. He's taken too many hits already this season. The fact that the O-line protected him, the fact that he was able to stay back there and pick apart that Vandy defense with his arm, great to see. 10 different receivers caught a pass, and perhaps the most impressive part about Arch's day, despite everything else I just talked about, his number one receiver, Ryan Wingo, got hurt in the first quarter. He played 2 snaps. He had 2 catches on those 2 snaps. One of them went for a 75-yard touchdown, but his number one target missed like 95% of the game. Didn't matter. He was sharp. He was quick. He was confident. He was poised. Everything. He went through his progressions when he needed to. He improvised when he needed to. That C.J. Baxter touchdown's a perfect example of that. He did pretty much everything he needed to. Couple of throws that got away from him, but remember, it used to be like there were a few plays that you could point to that were really good for Arch, and the rest of them were just eh. Now we're getting to the point where like most of the plays are really good, and there's just a couple that are eh. It's a nice turn around. Great game for him. 2 in a row for Arch. Big opportunity coming up 1 week from Saturday. Another game ball going to Colin Simmons. I feel like he's gotten a few of these this year. 5 tackles. How about that strip, sack, fumble, recovery? Doing it all himself on Vandy's first offensive possession of the game. He was amazing. 1.5 TFLs for the game. He got held about 15 times. Maybe one of them got called because the refs decided they just weren't going to call anything on Vanderbilt in that football game. But Colin Simmons was incredible, playing like an All-American since conference play began. He's been maybe the best edge rusher in college football. That continued over the weekend. Another edge rusher who gets a game ball, Ethan Burke, the senior from right here in Austin. I have been begging for number 91 to get more snaps. Now y'all see why. 2 sacks, 3 TFLs. I said he was a great matchup for this Vanderbilt run-first offense. He's Texas's best run defender off the edge, but he also gives you a little something in the pass rush game too. I think he's an NFL player. I also know him personally. He's a great guy. So maybe I'm a little biased talking about him, but love Ethan Burke. Love the game that he had on Saturday. More 91, please. He was a difference maker for the Texas defensive line that had its way with Vandy's O-line pretty much for 4 quarters. Game ball goes to Emmett Mosley V. Great find from Steve Sarkisian and wide receivers coach Chris Jackson. Easy for me to say, in the transfer portal. 7 catches, that's a Texas career high. 69 yards, very nice. That's a Texas career high. Another touchdown for Emmett Mosley as well. You know, he had a great game in Starkville, and it was clear that the staff was starting to trust him more and more, and they were giving him a bigger role and making him a bigger part of the offense. Curious what he was going to do for an encore. Because Ryan Wingo got hurt, Emmett Mosley had more snaps at wide receiver than anybody else on the Longhorns. Another strong day for him. Great block as well on that Ryan Wingo 75-yard touchdown on the first play. He's been really, really good, man. Great pickup for Texas. And keep in mind, this is only a true sophomore here. So he's got some time left. He's going to get even better. And again, great pickup by the Longhorns out of the post-spring transfer portal. Another game ball goes to the entire offensive line. Maybe I'm cheating a little bit here because this is not an individual, but there's the cleanest pockets that Arch Manning has had all year long against a Vandy defense that ranked top 20 in the country in sacks going into Saturday. The run game, there were a few running lanes. Texas didn't run the ball incredibly well. Only 100 yards as a team, believe it or not. It's the second best SEC rushing output the Horns have had this year, behind only the OU game. So, yeah, it wasn't great running the football, but there were some lanes for the Texas runners to run through. And there were times where it felt like Texas was leaning on the Vandy defense up front. It was great to see. If you are asking me to give individual names, Cole Hudson and Connor Robertson. Credit the coaching staff for making the move. Something I think a lot of Texas fans have been asking for. Like, hey, can we at least see it? Maybe it's not going to work, but nobody else you're playing at left guard is working. Maybe put Hudson back there. That's his natural position. Try Connor Robertson at center. Texas finally did that in game 9, and it worked. We talked all last week about, speaking of the Oklahoma game, this was going to feel like an Oklahoma game in terms of the more physical team is going to win. Texas was the more physical team. They dominated on both lines of scrimmage. They won in the trenches. Huge part of why they won on Saturday. Hopefully more of the same for that group down the stretch. And honorable mention, Ryan Wingo. He was the highest graded player in the game for either team. Only 2 snaps, 2 catches, 89 yards and a touchdown. That's about as good as you could possibly do with how little he played. Steve Sarkisian said after the game that if it was an emergency situation, Wingo probably could have gone back into the game against Vandy. So with the week off, sounds like the expectation is that Wingo will be perfectly fine for Georgia on November 15th. And shout out to the Texas crowd, too. Took a while to get there. A little late arriving crowd, 11 a.m. Also, the construction around DKR is a total joke right now. But, man, a couple of people who went to the game said that was one of the loudest crowds that they've ever heard at DKR. 11 a.m. game against Vanderbilt. I don't know how many people were expecting that, but that place was packed to the rafters, and it was tough for Vanderbilt. So great showing by you Texas fans out there who made their way to DKR. There you go. Game ball to y'all. Game ball to everybody. If you made it this far, number 1, God bless you. Number 2, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, all of those great things. Can't thank y'all enough for your continued support of Locked On Longhorns. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets with my man Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers. They have you covered. They are your one-stop shop for all of your sports betting needs, expert analysis, game picks, the lock of the day. It's all there in one place. You can find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. More takeaways from the Vandy game, some sound from Steve Sarkisian, and we'll start to turn our attention to Georgia a little bit. I know we're 2 weeks away, but it's such a big game that we're going to need a couple of weeks to talk about it. Plenty more to get into. Even though it's an open week for Texas, we'll be locked in right here on Locked On Longhorns. But that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.